Hi, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter, president of examinee.com, and I'm bringing to you today just a brief video to go over some of the important points about establishing the medical necessity of a cane. And this is for those situations and times when your injured worker presents to the QME evaluation with a cane. We're going to go over some of the important considerations that you as the doctor are going to need to factor into your overall conclusions when it comes time to make a decision as to whether or not your injured worker qualifies for permanent impairment due to a gait disturbance under either Chapter 13 or Chapter 17 of the AMA guides. So let's just establish the scene here. You arrive at your QME or your IME appointment, and the injured party, or let's just call them your examinee, presents to the appointment with a cane. How then do you determine and establish the medical necessity of the cane? Well, I've put together for you a few basic steps. This is a brief video. It may not include every possible consideration that you'll need to factor in when it comes time to make your decisions, but we'll hit the major high points, and we'll illustrate with a few pictures and conclude this program with a video which demonstrates an examinee to be using a cane, and I'll narrate some of my observations of the use of the cane when we get to that point. So some of the questions that you're going to want to get answers to in your interview with the injured worker or the examinee is you want to establish the medical necessity of the cane. Now, in my opinion, and by the way, I elaborate on this much further and in much more detail in the 3-hour QME home study course entitled Gait Disturbance and Assistive Devices. But this is just a brief overview of some of the high points that you're going to want to question and get answers to. So number one is, when you see your examinee with a cane, you want to determine whether or not this cane was prescribed by the primary treating physician. If it was prescribed by the primary treating physician, that goes a long way towards establishing the medical necessity of the cane. And at the opposite extreme of that, I once had an injured worker who told me no, the cane was not prescribed by the primary treating physician, but rather he simply bought the cane at the flea market. Now, in my opinion, a cane that you purchase at the flea market does not constitute a medically necessary device. Now, does that mean that the examinee cannot benefit from a cane, or that the examinee does not need a cane? No, that is not the case. But it simply means that it was not prescribed by any doctor. It wasn't passed through formal protocol as other medically necessary procedures are required to be, at least in the state of California. For example, when you want to order X-ray studies or MRI studies or electrodiagnostic studies, or you want to provide for a TENS unit or an ankle-foot orthosis, those durable goods and those services need to be passed through the formal approval process under workers' compensation. Number one, to be reimbursed, and number two, to be considered as a factor, as a treatment factor in the care of the injured worker. So, was the request for the cane submitted to utilization review? Was the cane reimbursed by the claims administrator? If indeed the cane was prescribed by the primary treater, you should see some indication of that in the medical records. Probably be under the treatment section of the SOAP notes. If the cane was submitted to utilization review, you'll probably see some evidence of that in the medical records, in the UR records. If the cane was reimbursed by the claims administrator, you'll probably see some reference somewhere in the medical records. Now, if you find no reference in the medical records, does that mean that the cane is not a medically necessary device? No, it simply means that you may need to investigate a little bit further. But these are some questions to get you started, and these questions may reveal in 80 to 90% of cases whether or not this cane qualifies as medically necessary, or it was simply something that the injured worker got at the flea market or borrowed from their brother, etc. And you might just come out and ask the injured worker, did you get this cane yourself? Was it self-procured? If it was self-procured, ask them, do they have a purchase receipt that they'd like to submit for reimbursement? And if, in your opinion, it is a medically necessary device, that might be something that you might assist the injured worker to get reimbursement for, or at least you might advise them that they qualify for reimbursement for the device. Once you've established some of those issues, then you want to query the injured worker about how often they use the cane, because in Chapter 17 of the AMA Guides, it provides for permanent impairment for part-time use of a cane, and provides for permanent impairment of full-time use of the cane. So you're going to want to at least establish those two qualifications as to how often or how much or how dependent they are on the cane. So ask them how often they use the cane. And I had an injured worker yesterday who told me that they use the cane on a constant basis. And I asked them, okay, well, do you use the cane in the house? And she admitted that no, when she's in the house, she doesn't use the cane, because when she's in her house, she can lean on furnitures and chairs and doorknobs and tables, and she kind of stumbles her way around her house. But when she's out in the public, she requires, according to her, full-time use of the cane. Next, you want to ask them to show you the cane, and to show you how the cane is fitted to them. You might ask them, was the cane fitted to you by the primary treating physician? And did the primary treating physician provide instruction on how to use the cane? And as you can probably well imagine, there is a proper way to use a cane, and then of course there are improper uses of a cane. And like any medical device, if a medical device can provide some benefit, well, then it also has the potential to provide harm when it's not properly used. And the same applies to a cane. So you'd be surprised how many times you see people using canes improperly. In fact, you might start quickening your focus to people out in the public that use canes, whether you be at the post office or the grocery store or at the mall or wherever. Just start observing people with canes, and then make an assessment as to how they use the cane. There is a proper use of a cane, and we go over that in the QME Home Study Program on gait disturbance and assistive devices. So the primary treating physician should provide instruction on how to use the cane. And then you can simply ask him, how do you use the cane? How do you use the cane? And they'll say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what hand do you carry the cane in? And the cane should be carried in the hand opposite of the affected lower extremity. Because recall, when we walk with what's called reciprocal arm swing, such that when the left leg goes forward, the right arm comes forward. When the left leg goes back, the right arm goes back. And I'm going to show you an example in just a couple minutes where the injured worker is not sure whether to use the cane reciprocally or whether to use the cane tandemly. And so you can simply start to get an idea as to how they use the cane just by asking them, how do you use the cane? What hand do you use it in? How do you use it when you're just, say, walking around, such as walking up and down the street? How do you use the cane when you go in stores? Sometimes people will tell you that when they go in a store, they drop the cane and they get the cart they get the ride around cart. That would be an example. That would be a description that would substantiate the use of a cane. For example, ask them, do they use the cane when they go up and down stairs? There is a proper way to use the cane going up and down stairs, and so you can start making an assessment as to their general cane knowledge, I guess you could call it, or cane proficiency or efficiency, by asking them how do they use the cane. Next, you're going to want to ask them to take a look at the cane. And I have a very clever script for getting the examinee to allow you to inspect their cane. You can simply ask them, "May I see your cane?" "May I see your cane?" And you take a look at the cane. And there's several types, basic types of canes. There's rounded handle canes, and there's T-handle canes, and there's quadrupod canes. And this is an example here of a T-handle cane, and my injured worker said that they purchased this at the CVS pharmacy. And without going into the different parts of a cane, which down here we have the tip, here we have the ferrule, here we have an adjustment setting, here we have the foam handle, and this is called a T-handle cane. So just in general inspection, you're going to want to look at this cane, and you're going to want to make an assessment of what the cane is telling you. Now, canes do not speak, but the cane does speak to you if you inspect it, and it will tell you something about the amount of use and the amount of wear and tear that the cane is getting, and that's something that you're going to want to match up with what your examinee's description is of how often they use the cane. So with this particular cane, my examinee reported to me yesterday that she uses the cane on a constant daily basis, except for when she's in the house, and she's been doing so for more than 15 to 18 months approximately. So as I look at this cane, and I say, well, this cane looks fairly pristine. No major nicks, no major dings, there's no dents, it's not bent. The ferrule is completely intact and functional. The rubber tip looks relatively new, unless it's just recently been replaced. This is a relatively unworn tip. And then the handle is intact as well. I don't see much in the way of palm sweat on the foam. The foam is all intact. There's no rips, tears, pock marks, abrasions, missing sections. It looks fairly pristine. So this suggests to me that this cane may not be getting constant daily use over the course of 15 months. It may be used somewhat less than that. Do I know that for certain? No, I don't know that for certain, but the cane is telling me something, and to me it looks like a relatively fresh cane. Here's a close-up of the handle, and again the foam handle is completely intact. No rips, no tears, no abrasions, no frays on the cable, no discolorations, no worn out areas where constant palm sweat or pressure would cause wearing out or compression of the foam. The foam looks pretty good. Tip of the cane looks pretty good. This is a rubber tip, and you'll notice that circumferentially around the base of the rubber tip, there's no abrasions, there's no cuts, there's no uneven wear or tear, which would suggest that someone's constantly carrying it on the right side versus the left side. If that was the case, we might see some asymmetric wear on one side or the other, and this one doesn't show much in the way of tear. These are the traction grips on the bottom of the rubber tip, and you can see I've got the cane here standing on its handle so that I can see the traction grips. And you'll notice that the 3 traction grips are circumferentially intact, completely intact. There's no uneven wear, uneven abrasions. In fact, there's really very little wear at all. So what does that tell us? It tells us at least this rubber tip has not been used. Now, it could be that they just put this brand new rubber tip on this cane yesterday, and that would be something to ask the examinee about. Is this the original rubber tip, or have you replaced this rubber tip? Finally, and this is just an abbreviated procedure in this videotape, we go into much more detail in the QME home study program. You're then going to want to take your examinee out and observe their gait. Now, in this particular instance, I just did a very brief gait analysis up and down a hallway. Generally, I take an injured worker outdoors in a long parking lot. But in this case, we just did a brief evaluation in the hallway. And I asked her to walk towards me, away from me, and then back towards me. Again, so I could observe for the proper use of a cane. Now, I'm going to activate this video here in just a moment, and I want to draw your attention to a couple things. When she commences to walk toward me, you'll notice that she has the cane in her right hand. And as she commences her gait cycle, she begins the swing phase with her right foot. And she uses the cane to support the right foot for her first 2 strides with the right leg. Thereafter, she switches her use of the cane to use the cane reciprocally, such that the cane in the right hand then supports the left leg. So kind of some confounding and mixed use of the cane, and I'm really not certain what role this cane has as an assistive device, or what role or what support this cane actually provides this examinee. So if you have a more brilliant observation than I do, please comment to this video and provide me with your opinions and conclusions. So let's roll this tape, and I'll narrate as we go. Here she supports the right leg with the cane, and now switches. And now the cane is being used reciprocally, such that when the left leg stands, the cane is supporting. And I'm not sure that she's sure exactly how to use this cane. And for certain, we can say that stance and swing phases of both lower extremities are symmetric. In other words, there is no shortened stance phase that needs to be compensated for by the use of a cane. Similarly, swing phases of both lower extremities are normal, or I should say are symmetric.
Y la última vez a mí, por favor.
On physical exam, the left lower extremity was normal. All sensation in the L1 through S1 dermatomes normal. Motor strength all +5. patellar and Achilles reflexes intact. And so in conclusion, a couple of major steps to focus on when you are with your examinee, and that is number 1, to establish the medical necessity of the cane. Number 2, inspect the cane for proper fit, proper use, and then the amount of use. Perform a gait analysis, and then take all that information, put it together, come up with your best conclusion as to the role of the gait in the overall permanent impairment, if any, and support your opinions and conclusions in a way that qualifies as substantial medical evidence. And that really is the only secret of success that we have in this business, and that is to provide opinions that we can support as substantial medical evidence. If you can do that, you'll always be right. So this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I hope you got something out of this. And if you have anything to share with me, please comment on this video. Thank you very much.